Over 90% of the world's data is unstructured, and nearly 80% of enterprise data is never analyzed, largely due to privacy, governance, and infrastructure challenges. My name is Paul Nashawaty, and I'm the practice lead and principal analyst at theCUBE Research, covering the app dev practice. I'm joined today by Kit from Plainsight. Kit, always great to have you on. How you doing?
Great to see you, Paul. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, likewise. Kit, why don't you introduce yourself, Plainsight, OpenFilter to the audience here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Kit. I've been in the software game for way too long, 25 years or something like that. But I spent a bunch of time at Microsoft, and I worked on the Kubernetes project at Google, and I did a couple startups. And now I'm doing computer vision, and I'm trying to do it in, I would say, a different way than what we've seen in the market, bringing the principles of DevOps to vision, what we refer to as vision ops or VisOps for short, which is kind of a fun little term. And really kind of looking at how AI can enable enterprises to take all that unstructured data, video data, et cetera, and turn it into useful and actionable kinds of operational systems that can help their physical businesses kind of enter the digital sphere, whether that's connecting it to various ERP and data systems, or maybe agentic systems. All these businesses that want to adopt that. So Plainsight is completely focused on connecting agentic AI systems through vision to edge computing for business use cases, everything from food service to transportation and everything in between. And OpenFilter is our new open source project we just launched recently in May. And it's basically a standard unit of computer vision. It combines the software, this code, the machine learning models, and then gives you a way to connect to the data. So you can combine these different life cycles that are required for vision. When you build software, you focus a lot on sort of the code life cycle. When you build machine learning, there's the machine learning and model building and training life cycle. And then with vision, it really adds this third component that people don't always think about, which is how do I get all that video and image data and wrangle that large mass amount of data in order to enable training, inference, and these other use cases. And so really this VisOps concept brings those three life cycles together, and OpenFilter is the unit of application, vision applications for that VisOps approach.
Kit, great timing, right? It really is, because right now enterprises are very much overwhelmed. According to my research, I talk to enterprises a lot. We see that they're overwhelmed with massive volumes of unstructured data, especially around, like you mentioned, video and sensor data. That's really a kind of an area, and it's largely due to like untapped concerns around privacy, governance, operational complexities. There's a lot of real reasons that these issues happen. And the challenges lie within extracting the real-time insights and data from the edge, while extracting compliance and evolving regulatory standards that also have issues with, understanding the risks around AI as well. So there's like a whole slew of things here that kind of come together. And Kit, from our discussion, we explored ways to address the disconnects between the AI practitioners who are also, creating these specialized applications, cloud engineers who are focused on scalability and stateless architectures, and essentially bridging the gap between AI and cloud development. And I think when we talked a little bit, OpenFilter and Plainsight give that framework to help, simplify the development of computer vision, as you mentioned. But Kit, I think this is where you come in, right? This is where you come in to kind of solve the problem, or like we're trying to solve the problem that these organizations are running into. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I would say that the disconnect that you're describing, if you kind of look at it from the market, is that you think that computer vision would be easy. Look, the technology's been around for 20 plus years. It's established in large scale homogeneous type environments. Think smart cities and autonomous vehicles and your mobile phone apps. They have a lot of computer vision capabilities. When you use Instagram and you're put on a filter, like, which by the way is the inspiration for the naming of OpenFilter, is like these apps for turning video into these kind of AI powered experiences, right? We take that concept and take it to the server. But those kinds of computer vision have been around. We see it in movies. We see it in demonstrations at all the big tech conferences. And so you think, oh, this must be, established technology. It's easy. And so then an enterprise comes in and they don't have a smart city to go build computer vision for. They've got, a restaurant that unfortunately is sending out the wrong orders to DoorDash, and they're creating a huge customer sat problem. Or maybe they have a large flock of sheep that they're trying to, make sure are being fed and cared for appropriately. Or maybe they've got a bunch of cars coming through their port, and they need to keep track of all the lines so they can get people on the ferries, right? There's all these different businesses that are that are trying to solve computer vision challenges, but then they run into issues with cost and complexity and all the other regulatory and security and privacy issues. But really, there's a very practical issue, which is very similar to how you approach building enterprise software. If it's just code, it's one thing. But now we add these extra layers of complexity. The stream of video is coming in at 15 to 60 frames per second, whether you like it or not, and you need to capture that data, figure out what of that data is useful, feed it into your annotation and training process. You got to look for data that maybe is biasing your models or maybe is inappropriate to the models that needs to be managed in some way. So you have this data lifecycle, data supply chain issue, which is kind of the regulatory and privacy issues you're bringing up. And all of that complexity, it's a multidisciplinary problem. So one of the things that we're seeing is there's almost like a new role. And, we see what for shorthand for it, we call it a vision professional or viz pro. It's kind of a viz pro is kind of a person who is wrangling the data, building models, developing computer vision applications, and they need a tool set that lets them truly operate that in the enterprise. And this is happening both, internally for companies that are producing models, but they don't know how to get that model to production. Maybe they don't know how to get it to the edge. It's not really a stateless problem. Computer vision isn't stateless. Computer vision isn't a high replica, scalable kind of web development technology. It's something that really cares a lot about the data and the state, time and place. It cares a lot about these things. So you need a different kind of framework for development. Now, that doesn't mean we can't learn from cloud computing and DevOps. And that's really, I think, the key to this game is that the way we'll proliferate computer vision use cases, which, by the way, everybody's got use cases for it. The problem is that it's too expensive to adopt. But if we can get the operational toil, right, reduced, automated, simplified, to connect these different life cycles, the software, machine learning, and data life cycles into a cohesive system, now these vision professionals can be productive. And those people can then deliver the computer vision value, connecting these different emerging systems like VLMs and LLMs, and agentic systems, like edge computing, where you have this large proliferation of heterogeneous edge devices for inference that are all emerging in the market right now. If you think about how to build software once, build these vision apps, right, encapsulate them into a single unit, and then process large quantities of data as these videos are streaming in, and then bring that into alerting, reporting, ERP, and automation systems, right? That's what businesses are really looking for. And so that idea of solving that is really key. Now, when it comes to how do we help with that? The open source is all about bringing that and democratizing that methodology in software. Because it's not good enough for me to just say, oh yeah, just start managing your lifecycle. You need software to do that. You need tools for that. And so that's what we're really focused right now, is engaging with the community so we can build this standardized approach for improving those vision operations. And then on top of that, right, bringing the tooling for high accuracy models, building models based on, and training models based on real user data, making small models that are easy to deploy, making it so it can run on a variety of devices and runtimes, right? Not just NVIDIA GPUs, but also on other chips that are not necessarily designed for cloud, that are designed for edge. Right? All of that is kind of in this domain of improving the operations of vision. So we have a pretty broad vision and roadmap for that. And then today we're working with a variety of companies, both from a services and from an end customer perspective, to build solutions, get them to market quickly, which is really the key, and make it so they can operate it over time and continuously improve the accuracy, the capabilities, features, and security of those systems.
Kit, there's a lot there she just said, and it's very clear to me that you're incredibly passionate about this, right? It's obviously the area that you thrive in, you're growing in, and you can clearly see. Do I use the pun? You have a vision with the computer vision that you're kind of driving towards. It's really, really exciting to know this because, I do want to kind of talk about a couple of areas here that you touched on, right? And when we talk about, for the audience here that's listening, when we talk about all of the area intersections of these technology stacks that we're talking about here and we're building on, there's the regulations and ethical standards that kind of come into play. And you mentioned utilizing modular components like filters that can encapsulate machine learning modules and traditional computer vision logic, as well as utility functions or testing tools, but it also allows for the flexibility of composable vision workflows, right? And that's something that I think for the audience here listening, they really want to probably understand, well, what does it mean from capturing this information? And I have regulations, right? I have ethical issues, right? Because obviously the data can be used maliciously or not, right?
Sure.
But like, how do you encourage the audience here to say this is okay? We can move forward and we can use this in a good way, and it's not going to be used necessarily in a bad way. What guardrails are in place that are help for prevent that?
The way I think about this is that, whenever you have these threats of security, privacy, ethical issues, et cetera, it's really about remediation. It's not really possible to, in my opinion, I've never seen it work, to anticipate everything that could go wrong, right? You can articulate the risks, you can game it out, you can plan for it, but really what you need is the ability to respond. You need a remediation plan for if something unintentional or intentional happens, right? You need to address. Let's take a concrete example in the vision space. One of the things that you might have is, you have a camera, lots of things go in front of a camera. You can't control what goes in front of the camera. So you might have some frames that include, a person who maybe didn't give you permission, or maybe is an EU citizen and so is subject to GDPR. How are you going to address that? Are you going to do it by telling people not to walk in front of the camera? Well, it's like, okay, now I got this person who, from a camera flowed through our curation system into a training set, and now their data is now imprinted into a model. And you didn't know about it. Okay, well, what do we do, right? And so our technique and our approach for that is, when you identify something like that, you want to be able to go retrain the model and be certain that if you remove data from the training set, it's not going to make it into the new version of the model, that you have a new artifact, that you can quickly deploy that out to the environment. So that means that you can't think of training as a one and done scenario if you care about meeting regulatory and privacy concerns, right? Normally people think, oh, I trained the model and now I've got the model. Now I have it. And then I'm just going to keep that and maintain, and not even maintain it. I'm just going to store it somewhere. And then anytime I need it, I'll just download it and deploy it where it needs to go. Well, you need to know what data went into the model in order to be able to retrain it, because you got to keep that lineage and that data set and have the sort of provenance of the data that came in. Meanwhile, there's a functional aspect of this, which is I've got new scenarios happening, different lighting or different occlusions or different things happening in these frames that were used to train the model. So that by preparing for the privacy remediation scenario, you also are creating a capability to deal with model drift, deal with out of distribution data, for looking at gaps and biases in your training data and being able to correct it. So that is one of the key things that we look at from a model management perspective. This is kind of the ML ops, data ops kind of piece of the puzzle. When we think about VisOps, it's not just about the software, it's also about all these ways that data can infect your system, which causes these issues with your AI models and eventually with your AI apps. Whether or not that manifests itself, by the way, functionally, right? You still have a responsibility for the supply chain, the data supply chain, right? That feeds into the models you're training. Well, I would also posit that this applies equally to models that you source from third parties, right? You also need to think about this when you're getting a model from, Hugging Face or from a vendor or somewhere else, if you're really thinking about this issue. So the way that we've solved this, like I said, is really about that telemetry and lineage in the data system that leads into model training.
Yeah, well, Kit, I mean, it's clear to me that the filters around the data play a strategic role, especially when you're looking at data filtering, programmable, context-aware environments, right? You need to have that kind of an area where you're shifting from traditional data pipelines, and you're really looking at new opportunities for responsible AI. And as you mentioned, securing those ML ops workflows, right? You need to have that kind of flow in place. And, open source is a way to do that, right? That's what I think the whole OpenFilter kind of initiative is here. But a lot of organizations, actually, what I find in our research is 64% of organizations want to work with vendors that sponsor open source projects and, that work with open source projects, but they also want to work with vendors that offer those enterprise level support and solutions that allow for the advanced functionality. Now with vision kind of, dare I say, becoming a first-class workload moving forward, as we're kind of thinking about high throughput video handling and processing of information. Open source is kind of a way to do it. There's probably a lot of folks out there that are trying to roll their own, trying to figure out how this is working. But the devil's in the details, right? What would you advise the audience here if they're talking about this, thinking about starting their own initiatives, maybe a DIY project, and not knowing all the intricacies that are around this, and then also the support, Mel? And I think that's where Plainsight comes in, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's the way I think that the world is evolving on open source. I think we're starting to get pretty sharp about what the point of open source is. the free software kind of movement that led to open source, which is now powering, all the world's software infrastructure. And we would have a very different technology footprint in the world without open source. But what people have realized is that, it's not free. It's something that needs to be developed and managed and maintained over time. And so you need to have some rich ecosystem of somebody kind of footing the bill for that, right? And so when people are building now, it's not kind of used to be a little bit of a dirty thing to have commercial interests around open source. And I think that's become much more sophisticated. We chose with OpenFilter to go Apache 2, really because we wanted to see maximum extension and adoption in the ecosystem. We want to see more people building on top of this and having full confidence that we can't kind of pull the rug on them and, threaten to do something unnatural. But at the same time, you're right. Like, it's not a product, right? You're getting access to the code. You're getting access to something that if you're a developer and you have the patience and skills, you can manage it yourself. But a lot of people are looking for something that feels a lot more like a product. And they want something that's like a, well-constructed distribution. It's got software supply chain. It's got telemetry. It's got all the support. You've got somebody you can call. If you have a problem, you can call my cell phone, right? This is what people are looking for when they are looking to build a business on software, because, there's a risk with open source, not just about, what will happen to the project. There's also a risk of like, what if it doesn't work? What if there's a bug? What if there's an integration issue? What if I have a, educational problem, et cetera? So that opportunity is there. And then, we take it one step further with Plainsight because we offer some capabilities around data management, model training, publishing of filters, the filter runtime in different flavors. We have also some specialized and advanced computer vision apps, which we haven't open sourced and are available only in the commercial. So we kind of try to take a blended approach, I would say. And we really, really believe that open source is the way to build things, especially when you're trying to drive toward, as you said, kind of a standard way of doing things, a different way of thinking about the operational footprint and requirements, like driving a different design. Because what we've seen in the market with computer vision and why it's been so difficult is you kind of need a PhD to get, a computer vision project off the ground. You're having to learn about, all these different problems. There's the machine learning problem, but there's also a lot of optics and camera integration and, the trigonometry and like there's all this different stuff that goes into building computer vision apps, let alone making it work in a software environment where you have to integrate it, add, alerting and data management and all this other stuff. So there's just a huge amount of kind of upfront psychological investment, right? You have to make just to get your first computer vision app. We wanted to short circuit that and really make it so that whether you're building a prototype or production, you have the same runtime framework. So now you can do is go directly from a prototype to production instead of what we've seen in the market, which is, a lot of energy going into getting this, perfect little prototype going. And they say, okay, well, now we got to deploy it and nobody knows what to do next. And we're just stuck and we kind of have to start over. This is really the difference. And I think this is where we've seen incredible value in the cloud computing market around, virtualization and Docker and Kubernetes and these other kinds of projects because they drive standard interfaces, right? They encapsulate the different applications. They give you standard interfaces for management. You get orchestration. OpenFilter is trying to do the same thing for vision, but with this extra new complexity because you have the three loops. You have the software development loop, you have the machine learning loop, and you have the vision data loop. All three of those loops need to coalesce. And this is why vision professionals are having such a hard time. They're not able to just do software development or just do machine learning. They have to also integrate it with the vision data. And then that creates this extra complexity. So when they want to ship software, they got to now really build that application completely. And I think this is what's going to change. If there's one thing to kind of take away from this, the big idea here is that when we're seeing enterprises really get these vision workloads running, they're going to have a different way of operating them than they've had in the past. It's about aligning these three loops into a singular system. And we believe that the OpenFilter, this filter runtime, is the single unit that flows through that system. It aligns the vision data, machine learning, and the code into one artifact that can be expressed across many, many different types of workloads and can run, whether it's in agents or edge, right? One way to describe a vision app that can connect cameras to this, unstructured camera data to structured business data that can go into ERP, CRM, alerting, or agentic systems. That's really the big idea of what we're trying to do here.
Kit, it sounds like this is a super complex problem that you've simplified down to a deliverable that kind of reduces that operational complexity that somebody would have to do on their own. That sounds like the right way to kind of look at it. So whether the audience here, whether you're just starting your journey or you're well into your journey, there's opportunities here to kind of look at ways to explore how to enhance what you're currently doing today, either just getting started or really kind of take it to that next level. Kit, it's been great having you on. I know we're right at time. We've done a lot here and we've talked about a lot, but it's just really the kind of the tip here. So we definitely encourage the audience to reach out to us. But definitely thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And big thank you to all of you that's tuned in. This is really great. We really appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But that wraps up this episode, and we'll be back next Wednesday for another conversation, diving into the tools, trends, and talents, shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying it to the edge, building it with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social. If you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect, you can always reach me at pauln@siliconangle.com. Until next time, stay curious and stay building. Thank you.